All right, welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cornwall and Dr. Dubinsky, for making this whole platform possible as well. It's great. So let me give you a little background about who I am. I've been here 15 years at the University of Oregon. Came here by way of Boston, where I actually was working for a top Olympic partner, John Hancock, for quite a while, and got to see the value of sponsorship and what it did for an entire employee rationale and who we were on this earth. So I appreciate all of this. A big part of what I care about is all of the aspirational things that you all are talking about. The catalysts that the Olympic Games serve from a business standpoint, from a science standpoint, from a government standpoint, from a nation branding standpoint, all of these things. And where I tend to get involved is in this intersection of governance and the commercial side when there's friction. So my background, I'm 30 years a mediator, about 20 years an arbitrator. And so I play both in sport law and sport business, kind of at those intersections quite a bit. As part of that, I serve a few roles here at the university. I'm a professor of practice in the Lundquist College of Business. So I teach things like legal aspects of sport business, negotiation. And then I also am our faculty athletics representative, which is a role no one seems to know, but it's a key governance role in the intercollegiate model where it turns out we produce a lot of Olympians out of that movement as well. And so there I get to play in that space quite a bit around governance and what that looks like. I serve as the principal point of contact for all of our student athletes and serve on the Big Ten and the NCAA around there too. At the international level, I have the great privilege of being an arbitrator for the Court of Arbitration for sport. Again, something that many people don't think about very often, but that is the high court in sport where many of these cases bubble up to ultimately. It's based out of Lausanne. And then I serve on the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee as an arbitrator and a FIFA mediator. And also for USA Track and Field, I chair the Safe Sport Appeals Committee where we hear about 100 cases a year around safeguarding as well. So I spend a lot of time thinking about things that hopefully you don't, because they'll keep you up at night and make you feel, oops, sorry, we're doing the double skip here. Let's go back. There we go. All right, so question becomes, why does this even matter at all? So if we want to see all of the great benefit, we have to really think about how do we preserve that aspirational tone of the Olympic movement to begin with. And a big part of that is going to be having processes that make fair dispute resolution possible at all. So it's not just about being a person of trust, but having systems that people trust and having access to justice that people can really get after. And around the world, that's a pretty big issue. For example, in Turkey, we've had over 80 cases just in soccer alone in the last year where the main fact pattern is the club will confiscate their passport until they get something out of the athlete that they want. Clearly, that's not the aspiration that any brand wants to be associated with when you start thinking about those kind of situations. So the challenge is the real world's ugly at times and a little messy. So all these things, when we think about the possibility about the Olympic movement and the brand, has friction. And so that's where we try and think about how do we play in that space in a way that is meaningful. So for me, I think about the pillars. How do we do this? A couple pillars. One, first of all, neutrality and independence. So the Court of Arbitration of Sport, for example, is made up of folks from all around the world. We get together at least every 4 years, but often quite a bit more, and share best practices. Think about what it means and how do we figure out a landscape that people trust. So when there is a dispute, like a Jordan Childs dispute, that people trust that the outcome is reasonable. It doesn't always work out that way. In fact, the ones we hear about in the media most often are the ones that probably didn't go quite as smoothly as we hope about. What you don't hear about is the hundreds of cases that get resolved all the time that go quite well. The other part is transparency. So there really is a lex sportiva, sport law around this that develops a strong jurisprudence. And we work really hard to teach it to our law students, to our biz students, to think about the impact around there, but to other arbitrators and mediators around the world. And most importantly, the timeline for sport is unparalleled. So if you have conflict in commercial airlines, generally you have some time to work through some of the impact on that. It may be messy, but you can work through it. an athlete's career is often thought about in these 4-year cycles. And so if it doesn't get resolved, for example, there was a prominent runner in Oregon who missed 2 Olympic cycles from one anti-doping violation. And there's quite a bit of controversy of whether or not that was a fair process or not. But you can imagine the impact. It's very hard to think about coming back from 2 Olympic cycles and still having a prominent career. I think about the what. So all the types of things I deal with. Who makes a team? Fundamental question. Those processes are sometimes quite objective and clear, and sometimes there'll be 9 objective elements and 1 subjective element. So for example, the Paralympic movement around Paralympic triathlon, they had some really good criteria that were objective, and then one that says, or as so-and-so committee sees fit. And so there was a year where they selected the 100th ranked Paralympic triathlete to participate when the 3rd, 4th, 5th got skipped over. You can imagine that that becomes a controversy and trying to figure out what's going on around that as well. There's all kinds of governance and leadership conflicts that we work on that are a big part of this. And of course, integrity and safety violations, everything from safeguarding, which is a major issue in the post-Nassar landscape. There's been tremendous work, and the US is very much in a leadership role around the US Center for Safe Sport, but it is far from a perfect system at this point. It's in its infancy, trying to figure out how do we create protocol that keeps athletes and others safe? How do we create screening mechanisms that are fair and transparent? Balancing safety with due process, things that we see in all facets as well. And then of course, anti-doping. What is acceptable and not acceptable around the rules, and how do we enforce them as well? So I'll just kind of leave with a thought here that this Olympic ideal, the Olympic ideal, doesn't happen just by chance. So there's a lot of thought put into how do we create the structures around this that make sense. And there's a little Latin I teach my students all the time. So hopefully they walk out of here saying they know a smidge of Latin. But it's lex lata and lex ferenda. So lex lata is the law as it is, and lex ferenda is the law as it should be. And we play in that. So when I'm in a case, I'm always thinking about how is the law written as it is, and I'm enforcing those rules and applying them with the facts at hand. But it doesn't mean we don't hint at how the whole system could be a bit better and even more aspirational in how it's applied, and then challenging others to create the governance structure to allow for that as well. So at the end of the day, all the things we're doing in human performance, in sponsorship, thinking about the philosophical and ethical issues around here, all of these are things that come into the collision for me around governance and the commercial side. So thanks for thinking about this a little bit. I'm going to hand off to Dr. Cornwall.